Yeah, I just want to throw this in here. We're talking about the children, or at least I was talking about the children. And this is old, okay? Percent of children's trips made on foot. This is 1995. It was down to, at this point, about 9% of trips. So this means every time they go out of the house, or they go out of the school, or they go out, only 9% of the times were on foot. All the rest was in a car. Okay? Children who are overweight. And it's gone up like that. American adults now, 30.6% obesity rate among American adults. Okay, that's not overweight, that's obesity. So obesity is defined as body mass of 30 and above. Overweight is 25 and above, and that's over 2/3 of the adult population. Here we go, obesity rate in the developed world. And this is us over there in the United States. We're number one. Rest assured, okay? And pulling ahead. This is the developed world. This is Japan here, Japan and Korea. And so we might have some people in the audience who will say, but, you know, Robert, there's different body types. Sure. And so on. But they're okay, this got squeezed over. It's given Mexico under the arrow. But we're that arrow should come to us. But there's environmental impact on that, okay? So, how long do I have? About 10 minutes? Okay, all right. Is that good? 10 seconds? 10 minutes. So, what are the tools? And I'm here to talk about tools, and not just about inspiration. I think inspiration is important. People doing exceptional things is important, but there are tools that we have embedded in the state constitution that you can potentially access to build healthier communities. And I know there are a bunch of planners here and some redevelopment people and people from consulting firms, so you might know a lot of this. Bear with me for those who miss the second half. The general and the specific plan. So the Compton watershed encompasses 4 separate municipalities. Is that correct? That's what I've heard today?
4 or more.
4 or more. Okay, the or more part. Okay. So that means that there are 4 or more potential planning processes to get involved. Okay, the state law requires each municipality to have a general plan. The general plan has to be updated every so often. The general plan is required to have elements. Okay, elements, that's planners talk for chapter. Okay, in English we'd call it a chapter, but planners we call it elements. Those elements can have language in it that create healthier built environments or less healthy built environments. Choice is up to you. It's up to the planning process. Okay. And I'm going to talk about redevelopment today. We heard a lot about that. I go around the state talking to public health advocates about redevelopment. And not every redevelopment agency has such an eloquent spokesman who is interested in public health. And so sometimes when I bring up redevelopment, I see people go, you're not supposed to work with them. You know, redevelopment is about economic development. Redevelopment is about building up the tax base. There are different ways to build up the tax base in your community, and they can have different impacts on public health. Okay. So my main point today, I always like to give a main point, and after this, if you really want to fall asleep, go ahead. But the main point is that there's health-oriented language can be put in the general plan or the specific plan. I don't know what type of planning process is going on right now, and in the redevelopment plan to provide a legal foundation for later policies, plans, and implementation strategies. So there were some phenomenal pictures shown this morning by Brock of the different rivers in Korea, in various other places, the Guadalupe in San Jose. Those sort of things, you can, in the general plan update process, when they're updating the zoning codes, work through that zoning update process to put in language in the general plan that says this is what we want the place to look like. This is how we want the river to be redeveloped. So that you don't leave it up to accident or some sort of fortuitous, you know, by some miracle they hired this open-minded landscape architect who had this great idea. You can start to write those sorts of things into the zoning code. So you can get different types of places out of your planning process. So now planners are talking about mixed use. Before they didn't believe in mixed use. A long time ago, everyone thought you needed to separate uses. And once upon a time, that made sense. Okay? The reason we have a planning profession and a public health profession in America right now was because it used to be that cities were big industrial centers. You had slaughterhouses, you had factories, you had tanners and all that kind of stuff. And people living right next to that, that was a health hazard. You had a lot of infectious disease. You had foul water flowing in the streets. The planning profession began in the late 19th century, as did the public health profession, to deal with those two things. So we started to get things like sewers, storm drain runoff, so that stuff wasn't sitting in the streets. You had zoning codes that separated uses so that residential was far away, or as far away as possible, or hopefully, well, didn't work out in every place for anyone who's familiar with Richmond, California. I've seen people living across the street from the refineries. But bear with me. But residential was supposed to be far away from these polluting sources, okay? I don't know if you all have looked around recently, but cities aren't that industrial. We've entered the post-industrial age. And everyone drives, and everything is built for cars. So planners and public health are now coming back together and saying, well, hold on, maybe what we need is mixed use, so that people don't have to drive so far. The idea of keeping the uses separated doesn't make the infectious disease sense that it used to, and it's actually causing chronic diseases. So planners are now advocating mixed use development. And the point of mixed use is the grocery store that you want to go to, work that you need to go to, entertainment that you might want to go to will be within walking distance of where you live, so that walking becomes a possibility. Okay, that's the point of mixed use. Couple that with density, and then you can really ensure that these things are within walking distance. Connecting people to transit and services. This is the VTA down in Santa Clara County, San Jose area. This sort of stuff is transit-oriented development is what this is called, TOD. It's being written into general plans now all across the state of California. And if anyone here is familiar with SB 375, no? Yeah. Yeah, I know you're familiar with. Okay, thank you, Doctor. California, we passed a law a couple of years ago, AB 32, that's going to mandate a reduction in greenhouse gases. By 2020, California is supposed to cut back its greenhouse gas emissions back to 1990 levels, which are still pretty high. And then by 2050, we're supposed to cut our greenhouse gas emissions 80% below 1990 levels. Everyone said, awesome, how are we going to do that? SB 375 was passed last year, SB Senate bill, which says, okay, the metropolitan planning organizations, like what's one measure, SCAG, that's an unfortunate acronym. All of Southern California need to do something about that happening. I'm sorry. ABAG up in the Bay Area, I thought that was bad. SCAG, anyhow, I digress. All those MPOs have been told by the state that they've got to produce transit-oriented plans to reduce vehicle miles traveled. That's the VMT. Otherwise, the state's going to withhold transit. Okay? That's SB 375. That's the teeth that are coming in to the goodwill of AB 32. And us in public health planning are very excited, because the only way to reduce vehicle miles traveled is to build dense, mixed-use places that people are going to walk to, and that'll have a public health benefit. So all this stuff is starting to come into play.